Oh, hello there. Well, I'm surprised to see you or anyone here with my lack of depth perception. Odin, god of war and stuff. I'm here to thank you for making my kingdom, the AYN kingdom, as glorious as it is. Indeed, it is with your worship and your use of my magnificent power we have made this kingdom all expanse and beautiful. That's not easy, having this entire company on the back of my mighty shoulders. Sure, I tried to get my deadbeat brother in on the gig, Loki, but we don't talk about him much anymore, now do we? Anyways, regardless, it may also surprise you to know I have children. Disappointing children. And you, this layabout here, is exactly my point. What are you even doing today besides playing God of War over and over again?
What do you want, Father?
What do I want? I want you to get off your godly tuchus and get some godly work done around here. As Thor, you have a name to uphold, and it's an important name, because it's my name. What are you doing down there besides awaiting your talent to find you, or the moment to arise like some other god-awful Disney reference?
Are you challenging me, Father?
Why, in the gods' names, are you wearing shades over your glasses?
You took me off of your insurance! My contacts fell in the toilet.
Well, this whole insurance toilet game wouldn't even come into play if you had any semblance of a celestial job.
You know what, Father?
Yes?
I think I will take a job.
It's about that. I must say, I'm proud.
You're...
What? God's meat, what did you just say?
Oh. 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 I want your job, Father.
You think you're just as strong as me?
Just as strong!
Strong you may be, but do you think you can carry the weight of this company like me?
I was born to lift that and more.
This means nothing. Just because you're my equal in some things means nothing. You're not better than I at anything.
Funny you should mention eyes, Father, for you have but one, but I have two.
Oh, your fancy 20/20 prescription vision means nothing in this realm. For I am larger than you, and by video game logic, that makes me your superior.
Size doesn't mean everything, Father, for there is one thing that is much better and much more important than size.
What could that be?
Pocketability.
That is pocketable. See? That's right there. You can go anywhere with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Groceries ready.
That. Doctor's office.
Speaking of, Freya needs some. She needs like beef and whatnot. You forgot about that. Later.
Fine, and we go to the grocery store.
Let's get on the SUV.
We've got a lot to talk about in this video, so let's just jump right in. At time of recording, you can order the AYN Thor direct from the company's website, starting at $250 for the base model. The model featured in this video is a Black Pro model sent to me by AYN for the purposes of this review. As is always required, all opinions are my own, I'm not being paid, and they're not seeing this video before it is published. It's time to hop on our mount and ride into Spec Town. The AYN Thor is powered by the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 processor. The GPU is an Adreno 740. The device can have from 8 to 16 gigabytes of LPDDR5X RAM and comes with 128 gigabytes to 1 terabytes of storage depending on the model you purchase. You can also expand storage via a micro SD card slot. The top screen is a 6-inch AMOLED display with a resolution of 1920 by 1080 and 120Hz refresh rate. The bottom screen is a 3.92-inch AMOLED screen with a resolution of 1080 by 1240 and a 60Hz refresh rate. Giving the device life is a 6,000 mAh battery. For connectivity, this handheld has Wi-Fi 7 as well as Bluetooth 5.3. The device ships with Android 13. The packaging this time around is actually really nice. The literature and user guides are now nicely tucked into the lid, and then there's the device itself and a USB-C cable. AYN also provided me with a grip for the Thor, which we'll talk about in a little bit. It's time to tour the device, where we're going to just walk around, see the hardware, check the buttons, do all the little Contra testing and D-pad testing and button testing, all those things that we do when we get a device in for review. Let's go ahead and start at the top here, and we actually have stacked shoulder buttons. I'm actually very much a fan of this. There is not very much travel on the triggers. As far as I understand, these are just regular digital triggers, and usually with a device like this, it's meant for DS and 3DS gaming. It's really not something you're going to want an analog trigger for anyways. I will tell you that these are some very clicky bumpers. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. Obviously, you're not going to get any sound on the triggers. Those are very silent. But L1 and R1, yeah, very, very clicky, very loud. Usually with a trigger, you're not going to be mashing these all that much like a face button. So I don't anticipate it to be a problem if you're playing this at night. But this is what the top of the device looks like, and there is no I/O other than the triggers and the bumpers, and of course you have the hinge here. I don't know, I'm not really an expert on hinges. I could see there's like a little bit of the inside of the hinge mechanism there. I don't know if it's supposed to look like that. I don't see any cracks here in the 2 weeks that I've had with this thing. Let's take a look at the sides here. Again, there is zero I/O. All of our I/O is actually here on the bottom of the device. We have our volume rockers, our power button, which I'm going to talk about later because I feel like this should be a little bit more recessed than it is. If you turn it on, or if you press it, it will turn the device on. And that's an issue. I think when the lid is closed, that power button shouldn't work, or it should be recessed so that you don't accidentally turn it on. You have a single USB-C cable, you have a headphone jack, and you have a micro SD card slot. And that just pops open and you have pretty easy access there. Back of the device, you just have your intake and your exhaust. This is a matte plastic. It does get smudgy, but it doesn't get that smudgy. But this one in particular doesn't look bad, and I've been using this pretty consistently, and yeah, you do see some smudging there, but even like with my lights directly on it, it's not that bad. This matte plastic was a very good choice. And the other reason that I want to keep the black model is because it's black all around. So even though this black glass front here does get smudgy and does get fingerprinty, when you're playing games on this, there is no difference between the black bezels of the screen and when the bezels of the device begin. That it makes for a very immersive experience, and I really do enjoy being able to play 4x3 content on the bigger screen, or being able to have the DS screen be the correct aspect ratio and not have to worry about where the bezels end and where the device begins. And unfortunately with the Rainbow unit, you're gonna have a clear divide because everything is going to be a lighter color. So now let's take a look at the inside of the device. Here is the top screen, and then here at the bottom you have all of your game controls. So let's start with the joysticks. For being recessed joysticks, They do seem to have a full range of motion. They do seem to work very well. Let's go ahead and take a look at the D-pad. Feels like a dome switch connection. It is a little bit clicky. Let's just go ahead and test that out. Not terrible, not great. You have your Android buttons down here, start and select up here. You have this lip here, which houses the AYN button, and pressing this will bring up the Thor control center, and you can access pretty much anything you want right from the bottom screen here. Fan control, clean out the memory, you can turn on the LEDs from here, you can adjust vibration. Pretty much all of your settings are here, but then down here you've got these screen controls. You could turn off the bottom screen if you're not using it, then just press the AYN button to bring it back up. You could turn off the top screen if you're not using it. If you're just using the bottom screen, you could have both screens. You can pull up the multitasker right from here, and then you can also control the FPS mode. So if you want to play a DS or 3DS game, your best bet is going to be to keep it in 60 FPS mode. But if you're just going to be using the top screen, then definitely bump it up to 120 FPS mode, so that way you can take advantage of some other features like cloud gaming or Android gaming or things like that. And then the last thing we need to test in this device tour are the face buttons. So let's go ahead and just hold them up here. These are actually very noisy, and they have a lot of travel to them, more than I expected. Here's our sound test. You hear that? They're very clicky. Same as the bumpers. I mean, granted, even if you're just lightly tapping them, there is an audible sound. And then you have this all glass screen front, which does get very smudgy. I definitely have to clean this inside part more than I have to do the outside part. Let's do the Contra test, and this is actually a perfect example of what I'm talking about with the black unit. This is 4x3 content on a 16:9 display, and you could see the bezels just blend right into the unit. You would never know that this is a 16:9 display if you were to just look at it, because the OLED screen makes everything blend in really nicely. And as is typical with AYN D-pads, you will pass the Contra test no problem, and that's because, at least in my opinion, that these D-pads can either go one way or the other. You can either be able to do intentional diagonals like I am here, and my character's not going to move around at all, but we're going to go into the Street Fighter test next, and you're going to see that that game is actually going to be a little bit harder to play, because this D-pad is tuned this way. It's not going to be tuned for pulling off fighting moves. So let's go ahead and check that now. And you could see here, yeah, I am struggling to pull off Hadoukens. I am successful some of the time, but wow, this is surprisingly a bad D-pad for fighting games. I mean, maybe I'm just bad at fighting games, but look at that degree of not success that I'm having. Especially in the heat of battle where the enemy is actively trying to take me out. This is not boding well. Yeah, no. This thing not only fails the Street Fighter test, it fails it wonderfully, dramatically. I would not use that D-pad for fighting games. Now that we're done with the device tour, I want to do some direct comparisons to some of the original hardware that inspired the AYN Thor. This is a Nintendo 2DS XL. I've had this thing since 2017, and I never really found this thing comfortable. The entire device is just really long and flat, and I never really did enjoy playing it for longer gaming sessions, often finding times to play it one-handed, like in Pokemon games where I can use the L button as the A button in the settings. By comparison, the Thor has a bit more heft and a bit less width than the new Nintendo 2DS XL, making it a bit easier to hold, albeit just as flat. The ergonomics are still flat on the AYN Thor, so for me, I struggle to hold it properly because my pinky fingers will slip down underneath the middle of the device, and I'll end up getting hand fatigue over time. Thankfully, AYN does offer this grip, and I feel that this was engineered very well. It slides in and out very easily, so you can use it when you need a little extra comfort for longer play sessions. And there are scenarios where you don't necessarily need the grip, like if you're focusing strictly on having the device be pocketable, in which case it fits in a pocket just as well as the Retroid Pocket Flip 2. Leaving off the grip also allows you to play DS games that require you to hold the device sideways. In this situation, combining the Thor with a smartphone stylus will allow for some very authentic experiences that make you forget you are emulating. For every other situation, I've generally left the grip on, and my hands have wrapped very comfortably around it. All ports on the bottom are also very easily accessible even with the grip on. Let's also take this opportunity to compare the screens. The new 2DS XL on the left has TN screens, and the new 3DS XL on the right, I borrowed from a student, is also unfortunately one of those models that also utilizes TN screens. These screens are really starting to show their age in 2025. These systems are also going to run games at their native resolution, so even though this is an official system, I would argue that a modded 2DS or 3DS is no longer the best way to enjoy DS and 3DS content because these screens were never great to begin with. With the AYN Thor, you can run the same games at 3 times the native resolution on 2 gorgeous AMOLED screens. The Thor is still thicker and heavier than the 3DS XL, coming in at 366 grams. If you add the grip, the weight shoots up to 421 grams. For comparison, the 2DS XL comes in at 270 grams, and the new 3DS XL is 324 grams. As far as pocketability, the Nintendo systems are definitely designed with lightness and pocketability in mind, but you again have a night and day difference when it comes to the screens. The Thor still blows original hardware out of the water. You also have to keep in mind the other advancements that the Thor has made over these old 3DS models. The joysticks on the Thor are actual joysticks as opposed to sliders and nubs, and they both click L3 and R3. You'll see this design language all the way to the bump out on the bottom of the screen. Both the 3DS XL and the Thor have a lip where when closed, the screen is slightly elevated. On the 3DS, the lip is wide and keeps the screen from wobbling. However, on the Thor, the lip is smaller, so there is a concern that the screen can wobble around a bit when in a pocket. If you look at the 3DS XL's power button, you'll see it's a little bit recessed, which keeps it from accidentally turning the device on. Whereas on the Thor, this button is not recessed, which means there is a chance that this could be turned on in transit. Putting on the grip does mitigate these issues as it evens out the lip issue and it makes the power button more recessed, but it also makes the device not pocketable. There is one more comparison I want to make before getting into the software experience and gameplay, and that is another dual screen setup we got earlier this year with the Retroid Pocket 5-second screen. This is another dual screen OLED option that basically uses a clamp and a video out cable to add an extra screen to the Retroid Pocket 5. In this case, they are matching OLED screens, and your experience will be a little bit different on this device compared to this device. The bottom screen will be bigger, but the top screen will be smaller. This solution is definitely, with the grip on the Retroid Pocket 5, more comfortable, at least as far to hold, but it's very, very clunky. It's really hard to get this screen to fit properly with the grip case. And then there's this unwieldy wire as well that just kind of sticks up. You also have to figure cost. Currently, the Retroid Pocket 5 with the dual screen add-on can be purchased as a bundle for $248 before shipping. But if we take a look at the AYN Thor, there's a light model that has the exact same Snapdragon 865 processor as the Retroid Pocket 5 for $249 before shipping. Literally 1 cent higher, and you can have a more built-in immersive experience. And if you want to have the more powerful Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, which is what I recommend, you can upgrade to the base model Thor for $50 more. As mentioned before, the Thor firmware is equipped with something called the Thor Command Center, or TCC for short, which can be accessed by pressing the AYN button in the center of the device. Doing this brings up this quick menu, which allows you to turn the top or bottom screen off to save on battery life if you're only using one of the screens. You can also adjust the performance mode and the fan strength, turn the joystick LEDs on or off, and access a lot of those quick settings right from within this control center. You can even switch the refresh rate of the screens. Another neat feature of the TCC is the ability to adjust the volume of the top and bottom screens separately. So, if you're watching a movie, show, or YouTube channel on the top screen and maybe grinding levels of Pokemon on the bottom screen, you could turn the volume of the bottom screen all the way down to 0 and keep the volume at the top as the louder screen. This utility is missing from every other dual screen solution that I've tried so far, and it's a really cool feature to have if you're using this device for multitasking. Also, if you're monitoring performance on single screen games, you could just leave that bottom screen on where you'll get information on the frame rate, as well as the CPU, GPU draw, and the temperature of the unit. Now let's get into the gameplay section, and before we do that, I just want to let you know that we're going to be focusing primarily on dual screen gaming here, but I am going to show you some single screen gaming solutions. Just keep in mind, even though these OLED screens are absolutely gorgeous, I have heard reports of screen tearing and input lag, and I'm going to test those as best I can, but I'm not an expert in that field by any means. I did the vast majority of my testing by keeping the device in 60 Hz mode, and I honestly didn't see that many issues, or really any issues for that matter. That said, if you try to play at 120 Hz mode, you may encounter some issues with the bottom screen. I actually find the best way to utilize the 120 Hz mode in this handheld is more with things like native Android gaming. The 120 Hz mode is also useful for local PC streaming using something like Apollo and Artemis. Let's go ahead and give the input latency a test with Theater Rhythm Final Fantasy Curtain Call. This is a 3DS game. I'm in 60 Hz mode at a 3x resolution using Citra MMJ, and I'm going to risk potential copyright here for science, so if this section is actually silent, you know what happened. I'll leave it up to you to decide if the amount of input lag is tolerable or not. For me, I found this game perfectly playable and didn't really feel like I was missing notes because of the device. Your sensitivity and experience may be different, but for me, this rhythm game is perfectly playable. Another game that requires precise inputs is Super Smash Bros. 3DS Edition, and to me this seemed very responsive at a 3x resolution. You can see I'm pulling off moves and everything seems to be working just fine. This is primarily a controller-based game, however, and it's utilizing the top screen, so I guess I didn't expect input lag to be an issue here. For RPGs and Pokemon games, again using Citra MMJ, this will be a great experience. And dual screen RPGs are a great application for this device, and they are going to look absolutely amazing. However, if you're in more of a Halloween mood, you can play a remaster of the original Luigi's Mansion for the 3DS at a 3x resolution, and it looks absolutely amazing, and it also utilizes the gyro on the Thor to simulate the motion controls. And although Switch emulation is fragmented at the moment, I did manage to get Luigi's Mansion 3 running at its native 30 frames per second using the Citron emulator and custom turnip drivers. This is running in handheld mode, and I generally don't use other devices for Switch emulation anymore now that the Switch 2 is out. I just find it really cool that you could play the best version of all 3 Luigi's Mansion games on this handheld. Let's wrap up the game testing with a couple of Windows games via GameHub Lite. I only tried a couple of 2D titles, but the few titles I did try did run very well. This is something you need to temper your expectations on, but there is potential for some light Windows gaming on this device. This is something that I still can't believe is possible, and it won't work for every game, but there are some gems that you will be able to play on the Thor. GameHub even pulls from your Steam cloud to let you continue your saves on a computer later on. We've covered a lot when it comes to this handheld, so let's wrap things up with my final thoughts, starting with the positives. I love that AYN decided to go with dual OLED screens here, especially with this black model. Not only are the colors very vibrant, but the blacks are very black to the point where you just don't see where the bezels end and the device begins. It makes for a very immersive experience that not just rivals, but utterly smashes the original DS and 3DS screens out of the window, while also being just as pocketable as the systems that inspired it. The Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chipset is still powerful and also pretty mature at this point, with plenty of custom drivers available for higher end emulation and even some light Windows gaming. The software is also done right. You can use the Thor Control Center to make sure that the proper screens are working, and with the right emulators, it should be very easy to just jump into some gaming with very little prep work. No device is perfect, however, so let's get into the negatives. There are some issues that can arise when pocketing this device. If you are planning on pocketing the device without a grip, you might either have to deal with the slight screen wiggle, possibly depressing the joysticks or letting pocket lint in, or the power button accidentally turning the device on. This kind of takes away from the pocketability because you either need to put the grip on or keep the device in a case, or both. The only other nitpick I have is that the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chip is starting to show its age a little bit. For what this handheld is for, I'm glad that AYN attempted to keep costs down, but it's also coming out at around the same time as some better chips, including the upcoming Snapdragon 8 Elite that is going to be on the Odin 3. Overall though, the AYN Thor is fantastic at what it's designed to do: dual screen emulation. Let me know what you think in the comments below. That'll do it for this video, but if you already missed me, please feel free to like, subscribe, and join me in the Retro Handhelds Discord. And please consider joining these wonderful people who grow and support this channel on Patreon. Thank you so much for watching, and until the next one, bye for now.
It's actually not a bad game, I'll give you that.
Yeah, you see, that's Sub-Zero.
Uh-huh.
It's actually like a freeze god or a human or something that's a freeze god.
How do you do the move? Down.
Well, you're playing a scorpion, so hit back twice, and then the punch button.
Okay, the depth perception thing's really, it's just a pain.
Oh, look! Watch this.
Okay. How did you do that?
That's called a fatality.
Oh, we used to do these all the time.
You remember when we did that in Jotunheim?
Oh my god, who could forget? By the way, Freya was pissed.
I mean, like, you did destroy a whole frozen planet.
I said it was your fault.